Welcome to Tell Me More, the Allsteel podcast where design meets innovation and we explore the limitless potential of workspaces. In this exclusive series, we're peeling back the layers of workplace design. From the psychology of colors to the future of hybrid work, join us as we open doors to conversations with industry leaders, architects, and designers who redefine the modern workplace. This is Tell Me More, brought to you by Allsteel, because when it comes to designing the future, there's always more to discover.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tell Me More podcast. I'm your host today. I'm Andrea Gauss, Director of Client Solutions at Allsteel, and today I have with me Tyler and Taylor. Taylor, you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Taylor Morgan, I'm with Allsteel, and I'm on the Workplace Advisory team.
All right, and how about you, Tyler?
Well, hey, I'm Tyler Peterson. I'm the Vice President of Talent and Culture at Interior Elements, commercial furniture dealer, partnering with you all. We've got offices Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, and North Carolina. Good to be with you all.
Thank you for joining us. I'm excited for the conversation today. We're going to talk about the crazy big word of culture. And I love the notion of culture, creating great culture, but it's also sticky and tricky and a lot of nuances to it. So we're going to attempt to cover off on some of that. We'll see how far we get in the next 30 minutes or so. So here we are. We're going to dive right on in.
Let's do it.
Okay. So we want to create intentional culture. That's what we want to be about. I think as leaders, managers, and even employees, we want to be a part of an organization that has fantastic culture. Mm-hmm. So let's peel back the layers of what we think that means. So obviously, every workplace, it's a complex system. The more employees, the more people, the more complex it is. I know I've left and gone home for the day and said, man, if it wasn't for those people, life would be work would be really easy, right?
Right.
But it's not just the people. We think that culture consists of people, the place, as well as the policies. And collectively, they kind of come together. They have a really great interplay of how they interact with each other for the good and the bad, I should say. And so we really want to kind of talk a little bit about the interactions of the people, the physical environments that they are working in, interacting within, and then kind of those policies that govern their behavior. So we're going to talk about people first, because it always starts with people.
For sure.
So people being the heart of the culture, I think culture is both created by the individuals, it's also sustained, or it's evolved by the individuals, for better or for worse. Here's an interesting stat for you. Companies with a strong culture see 4 times higher revenue growth compared to those that do not or without. And so this indicates that a positive culture not only retains employees, but it's also boosting overall employee performance. So I'm curious, you are the Vice President of Talent and Culture. How are you intentionally shaping and reinforcing the culture that you want to see?
Yeah, and that's a great stat. And I think the first question there then becomes, well, what does that mean, right? Like, what is a good culture? And do I have one and do I not? And, you know, oftentimes we think about, hey, you know, because we're going to talk a lot about culture today, but also how do we improve culture without constantly saying like, oh, we've got a great culture. We've got a great culture. We've got, you know, like, because so much of it is the hidden pieces that you don't see, right? Or it is the small one-offs here and there. And so, yeah, I think first and foremost, an intentional culture always has to be constantly reinforced, but the message has to be on all levels of people, your CEO, your vice presidents, your senior designers, your leaders, and then even the person that just started in your office 2 weeks ago that graduated college last month. Right? That they are understanding, okay, how do we do things around here? How do we do things at Interior Elements or HNI? You know, how does that happen? And then just continue to reinforce it. Because culture doesn't change positively as easily as it can negatively, right? And so that intentionality is so key, just like you said, because we all want that more productive workplaces, more engagement. And I think it matters because we want our people to go home each night feeling fulfilled and happy. And yes, not every day is easy, but in a way that they can go home and say, hey, I made a difference today, and I enjoyed what I did.
And
I loved your
purpose.
comment of it's the CEO all the way to the intern or the recent college grad. I'm curious, amongst your leadership team, what are you doing to, I don't know, are you calling people out when they've stepped out of bounds? Do you have a way that you're intentionally kind of as a leader group giving candid feedback? Just curious.
Yes. And, the hardest thing with feedback is that oftentimes people feel like it's supposed to make you feel better. And the reality of it is feedback is supposed to make you better, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's
Now,
great.
how you deliver it is a different piece. And I think, when I think about how we as a leadership team look at feedback, there also has to be that element of trust. That I can say, hey, I trust Taylor completely. And so because of that, I'm going to tell her of, a challenge that maybe is going on in our area, and hey, we need to address it together, but that I can do it and knowing that Taylor, that I trust her and she trusts me, and that it's not going to be hey, well, I just talked to Tyler and he's having a trouble in his area, so he must not be good at what he does, right? So yeah, there's got to be that just, hey, like, how do we fix this, right? This isn't working. Let's put our heads together and don't fire hose anybody. Don't fire hose the ideas. Don't pour water on it. Like, let's just roll with it. Let's see what we can do to make it better.
Yep. I love that. So we've said, as we've worked through this topic a little bit on the Allsteel side, that leaders are really shaping culture through their actions, their decisions. They're physically on display, right? People are watching leaders as they move through space, while employees are kind of more bringing it to life through their interactions, their attitudes, and then their work ethic. Like there's something to be said for a really strong work ethic, but also a boundary between work-life balance, right? All of those things. So I'm just curious, what are some maybe unwritten rules or traditions or norms that kind of helps to shape the way you guys interact, or some attitudes to kind of continue to build a strong culture?
Yeah, and I want to hear more also about what you all do, right? Because we're 75 employees across soon to be 7 locations, which is very different than, sort of how you all might establish or manage your culture. But I think there always has to be sort of shared language, right? Unwritten rules per se, or for us, some of those tools often are Clifton Strengths. It may be Enneagram, it may be Myers-Briggs, just various tools that help people sort of understand, like, who am I working with? What does it look like on a good day interacting with this person? What are some challenges perhaps with this person? But also, there's a level of authenticity that I think has to happen day in and day out. That just unapologetically says, hey, this is who we are. This is what our culture consists of. These are the people that fit in, and these are the people that may not enjoy working here, and that's okay, right? But like, let's have that conversation, and let's really help people understand, like, what is that shared language we get to have, and then what do those sort of day one rituals look like? What does that onboarding look like, where people go through some level of consistency that reinforces what matters to us?
Yeah, onboarding is really important, and that common language that we use is so important. So we call our employees members. So we're not employees, we're members. And it's this notion that you belong to something bigger. You contribute in a way that you're going to grow it collectively or shrink it collectively. That, at the end of the day, we're given stock along the way as well. So we are invested financially as well into this larger thing. And so I think this member owner almost culture that has been established throughout the years and throughout time really does, make you feel like you belong and you're contributing in a meaningful way. And without you here, like, if a member is missing, you're missing a core element, right? And I think that's some of that implied language, which I love.
Well, that's so cool, right? Because my family and I just got back from a trip to Disney World, And
Oh,
I was lucky enough that I got to play golf for a few days. And for the golfers that might be listening to this, typically you have what's called a marshal that rides around and makes sure you're on time and you're not behind. Well, at Disney, as you can imagine, who focuses so much on the customer experience, that person is called the player assistant, right?
okay.
Now, their job is the same, but when you think about perhaps the connotation that, like you say, an employee may have versus a team member, right? So very different. The role may be the same, but just how you refer to those people, matters. And so I think that's a really cool way to kind of look at sort of, how do we do it? How do we say it that lets people know, okay, this is important.
I was really hoping you were going to say the marshal is Mickey Mouse. I thought that's what you were going to say, but
I'd love to see that.
That works too.
That would have been a hot job for sure.
Yeah.
But the family piece that you mentioned, I was thinking about how you refer to people and just talking about my family trip. But one of the things that I always try and do, and early on in the interview process, is how do I communicate who we are as a company without truly saying like family matters, right? But I'm going to make sure that early on, I want to tell you about myself, right? And my wife and my 3 daughters and what they do and what they're into, because I want that person to know like family really matters. And I'm going to, reinforce that by telling you about them, not just saying family matters, right?
Right. Yeah. Right.
So anyway, just all sorts of things that I think when we think about adding the right fit to our team and culture can really, make a big difference.
So I'm going to tease on that just a little bit more. When you're looking for new talent in that interview process, what particular things are you kind of trying to tease out in that conversation that you think will either have a fit, not only have a fit, but also maybe push you guys in a little bit? Because sometimes you don't always want them to be a perfect fit, right? Because you're evolving and changing. And then obviously you want to have longer term retention. So just curious if there's anything there.
Yeah, well, and I think it varies based on the role, but also the person or sort of maybe the office that we're looking for. For example, some of our offices, the strategies of how they do business might be more presentation style, much more formal, right? Versus some of our markets, it's truly just sitting across the table with people, and so that may require a different skill set. But I think we've found there's a lot of common traits to a lot of our successful people. Everything from getting a good sense of what does their drive and desire as a professional look like, as well as have they worked before? Even if and by that, let me back up and say, did they have to help put themselves through college, or did they work in high school? Right? We see just some traits there that may sort of signal to us, okay, this person had to scratch and claw, and maybe their work ethic sort of mirrors that. Certainly, it doesn't mean that if you didn't have to, that you're not going to be a hard worker. But yeah, we're just looking for, do they know themselves? Do they have the right etiquette? And do they want to be at a place where they can say, hey, this team at Interior Elements is an extension of my family, right? And I want to be with them.
Sure.
I look forward to going to Chicago and visiting you all and seeing other people, right? Like it's just sort of an extension of what we do and part of our team.
Family reunion. That's a design day that is best for. It's like, come to the trade show of the family reunion, right?
Right.
All right. So speaking of place and Chicago, Taylor, take it away.
Absolutely. So the second element, of course, of all of this is place, and how we look at place is really, it's the environment that shapes the behaviors. So it really shapes a lot of what we just discussed from a people perspective. But in essence, it's not just about the physical location, but it's also about the virtual location or the virtual element of our roles as well. So how can we really align both the place to those people aspects, and then make sure that we're really supporting the company or the organization's values and goals too? So when we look at place, and similar to probably how you look at place as well, it's really where, work happens. It's where that work is supported. It's where those intentional activities or those key activities of the office are supported. So curious to know, how important is the physical space in developing culture, and how do you look at it from interior elements?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a critical part, but it's a part that must coincide with how are we also taking care of our people, and what are some of those norms and best practices. I can think of situations, earlier in my career where, there was a company that I was consulting with, and they were super excited about this new building because they thought this new building was going to solve all their culture problems. I was like, no. You've also got to address the people part, right? You've got to address what are the policies around there. And same thing for all of us, right? Like, now creating that environment, where if you look at some of the studies that Gallup provides, that, the level of employee engagement starts with, do I have the tools and resources to be successful?
Absolutely.
And that means, is that a height adjustable desk for you? If you are working remotely, do you have what you need? Is your computer crashing every 3 hours? And if so, like, that's a problem,
Right.
And so, it is an important part, Taylor. I think the hardest part that I think of, and especially, in the past 5 to 7 years, is what does that balance look like of creating that place that's maybe now your home,
right,
or it's your coffee shop, and it may not always be your office, because that is really challenging, because culture is hard to build and strengthen if it's rarely in person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's been our experience.
No, and that's, very similar to ours too. And being more in that virtual realm or that remote realm of my role here, our team does what we call coffee chats on Fridays to help kind of build that culture, even though we're not all in a physical space together. So doing little things like that, I think, really help kind of build those, trust elements, and just build more of that camaraderie and team dynamics as well. So
I love coffee chat. What do you do at the coffee chats?
Yeah.
Do you have like prompts, like, or
no
is it just wide open?
No prompts. It is wide open. We just get together.
Of the tea. It's the spilling of
there
the
we
tea,
go.
right? That's what it should be called.
Yes. Yeah, we try not to necessarily, chat about work. It's just, how was the week? How are you doing? How are your families? It's more the personal level, more of a friendship, I would say, than it is a work conversation. Just to, I don't know, to get some of that socialization and those elements that we just don't get to, on a day-to-day basis. But
when you're talking about sort of that coffee time, and that's something I think that can get overlooked as busy as all of us are, is that the most successful teams are built outside of the office. And when I say that, I don't mean that you have to go bowling or whatever. Like, it may just be at the lunch counter, it may be at the water cooler, but it's where it's not just, hey, I'm coming in and I've got my headphones in all day and I'm never saying hello and I'm never taking a break. I'm never eating lunch with someone, because sometimes we think like, oh, if we just, crank it out, that like it's good. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, people don't know people anymore. Right. And so you never want to get to that point. No. So I love that idea, especially in a virtual, world.
We've also seen some research that shows that if you get together physically at a minimum of every 6 months, that just has a huge uptick in the way your team is bonding, working together, communicating. Yeah. So a very intentional, we're going to get together physically at least twice a year is something that we've really, really shot for, because you get to kind of know the individual in a different way, what their tics are, what makes them happy, what makes them sad. You've got that funny story. On my personal experience, every time someone has married in, it's like, we got to go on a family vacation because then we have a shared funny thing we can tease the newbie about, right? And the second that bond has formed, that we have a shared memory, then you just get along together and you laugh more. And I think that is really, that applies in the workspace as well.
Yeah, sure.
We just had our annual rookie school 2 weeks ago. It was here in Birmingham, Alabama, and it's where we bring all the people that have come on board within the past year. And I was just looking through the feedback today and sending it to Ben and Bam Bam, our CEO and president, and just saying, this is great. And it's the kind of thing that you can't always recreate in a virtual space, right? But those organic types of things where a couple people went for a walk one morning together, right, before the day started, or hanging out at a restaurant or the coffee shop, and those are just so important, and it's not hard to do. That's the thing. Like, it is not hard to put on your calendar, whether you're right now virtual or in person. Hey, we're going to have a happy hour in the kitchen next Friday, or we're going to bring your own lunch and we're going to have a lunch together. It's not hard, right? And it doesn't always have to cost a lot of money to build and strengthen the culture that you want.
Yeah, and you mentioned Brian and Ben too, because I was in Birmingham a couple of weeks ago, and we were flying down. We had some important conversations we wanted to have that were really kind of fun, and they both were like, but it has to end at this time because we have rookie school. Like it was important. It was a priority.
They prioritized it. Yeah.
That setting of that culture and that prioritization of time, it's really easy, I think, sometimes as a leader to be like, somebody else can handle the rookie school. But they didn't. They were like, we have to be there. We're a vital part of that, which I think is really important.
And guess what? Some of the most positive feedback was from that time was that they got to hear from them as well as other executive leaders, so they got to connect more with what they see as sort of the executive team. And so what an important piece.
That is important. And along those lines too, so I know you've got 7 locations with IE. So how do you continue to build that, without all physically being together, or we're all located in different places? How do you really ensure that the ideas and the cultures aren't necessarily siloed to one location, but it's carried through to every location? Is it through these rookie schools, or how do you navigate that?
That's challenging, and it's challenging not in a bad way, but it's challenging just simply when you think about just geographic differences, or not even a culture of our company, but a culture of, say, this city compared to that city, right? So you're already, maybe navigating some of those pieces. And I would say that, I think as long as a culture is about 80% permeated through all your spots, and then there's a 20%, if you will, that's maybe a little bit of a subculture, I would say that's okay, because again, how business might happen in Birmingham may be very different than how it happens in Raleigh, right? And we've got to trust the leaders in Raleigh to know, like, hey, that's not going to work here in Raleigh, and vice versa. So it's hard though, because you want to strike that balance. Even attire, right, is one of those things where you have some of your markets, and you all travel all over the footprint, so like some environments are just a little more casual, right?
They are.
I actually laughed because I was in DC one week, and then I was in the South, Birmingham, Atlanta, Nashville the following week, and I was like, okay, DC is super traditional, should have brought the suits.
Yes.
And then I was joking in Birmingham, I'm like, I think the guys wear a uniform in Birmingham. Like, it's all the same. Like, that's so true. Yep. So anyway, that is so true. So even the attire people wear, and talking to the sales leadership within Allsteel, like, our leadership is from East Coast. On the sales side, but leadership for the corporation is in the Midwest. And there was a big difference in kind of casual versus a little bit more professional in those spaces. And so I was talking to our seller actually in the Southeast, and we're all jazzing up for this big trade show we call NeoCon in Chicago, or Design Days. And she's like, she asked me, should I get more professional, less business casual clothing? Because our leaders in sales wear a little bit more professional versus business casual. And so we had a conversation about that. Like, how like I told her I think it's more important for you to be you and
Yeah.
you to be who you are in front of
Yep.
your clients and
Absolutely.
customers. And so but it was a really interesting that she had noticed that she was kind of rolling around in that. I just thought it was really interesting.
Yeah. And that's also though, when you think about, the folks that are listening to this and that are wrestling with the same type of thing is, okay, but what is that balance, right? Let's say
Right.
you're exploring a work from home policy, but maybe it makes sense in some offices and not others for whatever reason. A company believes that to be the case, and then well, I heard in this office they do that, or in that office they do that. So it's such a slippery slope in terms of maintaining how you do things, right?
Right.
But also doing it in a way that's okay. How do we listen to the needs of the market and hear what they're telling us, but not losing the whole idea of, hey, what dance with the one that brought you, right? Like that we're
Right.
not losing our core culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
that
That
authentic piece
fair
as
is
well.
not
Yeah.
equal, right? We've had a
Yes.
whole
Yeah.
conversation about equity versus equality, but this notion that I tell my kids all the time, fair is not equal. Like,
That's right.
and
Yeah.
but to be open, I think the most important thing is just to have that open dialogue and candor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's where also your shared language is so important to know that, for example, if I'm making a decision that I know about myself, that I'm typically going to make more decisions with my heart than my head. And so the more I learn about myself and the more the team learns about who they are, they can kind of hold some of those things in check and
Yep.
realize, like, wait a second, am I leading too much with my heart? And then I'm not putting my head into it, or vice versa. So that's where I think your leaders and your people really, the more they can learn who they are, is going to help all companies.
Yep.
well, look at that.
Absolutely.
Transitioned us right into policy.
I
That's
know,
what
it was
sounds like.
perfect. Yeah. Yeah, so in policy, I mean, this is really the third element of what we think equals culture, and we look at it as the guardrails of culture. So it's really referring to, the norms, the values, and those practices within the organization to really drive that integrity, and then to really kind of put, as we mentioned, the guardrails around us and how we behave within the environment. So a lot of the policies we look at are, hybrid, flexible work, technology as well, and then just policies around space usage. So really curious about what policies you feel are the most valuable, or what you're seeing within your market, and then what policies have you found to have the most impact as well?
Yeah, Taylor,
Yeah,
if I could back up on
you
just a
can back
minute
up.
on that and sort of say,
Yeah,
the piece with policy is that if there is not that incentive in place with some of those policies or a reward type mechanism,
yeah,
it may not work, right? Like it's
right.
easy to say like, hey, this is our rule in the break room, or this is our rule with how we share desks, but but if you're not reinforcing and saying, hey, I know y'all are sharing a workstation, let's just kind of have some norms or best practices. And I would even say a thing that we've done recently is, and we just talked about attire, is, I asked some of the people in the office that have been around for a while, like, what do you think is appropriate attire? And what would you say is not appropriate, right? And that helped sort of what I would say kind of more of a groundswell movement instead of just saying me from like up above or whomever saying like, this is what it's going to be, of like, hey, I grabbed 5 or 6 people and, these are some suggested things. And we just basically found pictures online of like what we thought was appropriate and what we thought wasn't. And like kind of use those as guidelines, but not as much policy. So,
Right.
I think if there's a way at times to avoid the use of the word, even though that's what it is, I think that resonates with people. But we're going to use it today because it sounds good. The 3 Ps,
The
right?
3 Ps. That's right.
That's right.
So I
Okay.
think
Yeah, you're right.
the buy-in matters, and
Yeah.
some of the most influential people that I've seen in organizations are not always the ones that have the title. They're not the C-level people necessarily. It may be that person who's been here for 3 years that everybody respects, that just works really hard, and you get to sort of see like, wow, that's the most influential person in this office, right? Not me or not this person or that person. And so really finding those champions, I think, to help you as it relates to shaping and crafting policy, however it is that your sort of organization deems it necessary.
Absolutely. Leading by example and being authentic. It's kind of funny how you just brought up the attire conversation. I past life was an adjunct teacher, and we did the same thing with all of our freshman students, but it really gave them the initiative to and the understanding of realizing what was, right versus wrong without someone directly telling them or directly saying, this is how you need to dress or this is how you need to show up as well.
Yes.
But no, I love that.
That's so hard though, right?
It is very hard. Yeah. It is very hard. So
what about, can y'all talk maybe about like when you all look at sort of your scale and how much, I mean, you touch all over, like how do you sort of align policies in a much larger footprint?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have moved our kind of in-office, out-of-office policy. We're just moving from a 3-2, so required to be in 3 days a week, flexible 2, to now asking people to be in 4 days a week, flexible 1, for those that are hybrid, not fully remote. And so there's been a lot of conversation around at a leader level, how are we leading in this way? And how are we explaining benefits? And how are we being transparent? Because my belief is I want to be available and I want to be around for those individuals as they're in the office to be able to engage with me. But if I'm in meetings 8 to 5, there's no benefit to them. Right. So having a lot of conversations around our meeting culture. And I think collectively, as you look data from Outlook and other software companies across the board, meetings have gone up exponentially since COVID. And somehow when we 252%, okay, you got it. Somehow we mentally said, in order for us to look busy when we're at home, we have to schedule all these meetings. Therefore, our boss knows that we're busy. I don't know. That's what we did collectively as a culture across the US. And then once we came back to the office, we're just used to all of these meetings rather than just swinging by and having a quick conversation. And so for me, that is a conversation that we're having, is how do we move away from a meeting culture that's super heavy-handed and little things like, instead of your meeting lasting the full 60 minutes, you auto reset on our Outlook calendars that the meeting length is 50 minutes. So that at a minimum, you have 10 minutes to digest or turn and talk to the person to your left or right. So I think that is super important. And then too, just like you said, when we're asking people to show up and be present, that they're given all the tools and resources that they need. So ensuring that the conference rooms are fully outfitted in the way they need to be outfitted, that they're digitally equitable from an experience perspective, that people have the technology at their desk, that they know who sits where, because we're spread across the campus with several buildings. So just some of those easy, like you think, okay, people just automatically know. Well, you don't know. And so we're even thinking through adjacencies of where are people sitting and do we need to reflect, and we shift them every so often. So what's our next iteration of, these departments are really working more together now than they were a year ago because business needs have shifted. So how does the physical space, change and evolve alongside? Definitely. So just a few things. Taylor, you had a really interesting conversation with somebody on this topic.
I did, yes. So I was talking to a director of workplace design within the Minneapolis market this week, and we were talking a little bit about how we're approaching the physical space from a planning strategy standpoint, and then also how these key activities like mentorship and socialization and collaboration are showing up. And for the longest time, they've just allowed their employees to sit wherever they wanted to within the firm. So what they're seeing now is that their socialization is quite up. They're trying to level set that with what it's doing to productivity. But what they've seen is that the mentorship has gone down because they are sitting amongst their friends, their peers, and they're not sitting around individuals that maybe have a little bit more expertise, a little bit more insight to other areas. So they're not getting that mentorship or those organic conversations like we used to. So she in the terms of policy, before we flip it to culture, she was like, maybe we need to implement a structure around where individuals sit and go back to more of those neighborhoods and those project teams so the mentorship can happen, but still allowing the socialization as well. So really designing for some other interactions around the workplace to still allow those friends to come together. But I thought that was an interesting perspective, because it's giving them the freedom, the flexibility to sit wherever they want to build that culture. They're lacking other activities along the way, for sure.
Well, and I'm thinking, okay, the last thing I want is like the two new people sitting together asking each other, like, "Hey, how do you do this? Or how do you do this?" Like, no. Like, how did you asking this other person that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, for sure. So I thought that was interesting, man. I think as we start to, think about how, people, place, and policy really influence culture, I think conversations like that are going to be coming to the forefront, which is exciting, I think.
All right. So as we attempt to pull this together, who wants to claim which of the 3 Ps are most important? Do we have a perspective, people, place, or policy, or is that not a thing? They're all intertwined. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'll say people, because, when you think about what we do or our end users do or our clients, all of the tools and assets that people have are depreciable, right? They all depreciate. People and pouring into people is the only thing that appreciates, right? That like pouring into that person. I mean, I stole that from somebody else. That's not my term.
Love that.
But let's use it, right? We like it. But it's so true, right? Yes, you all make outstanding furniture, and we sell outstanding furniture. But like at some point, this computer is going to crash, or at some point, you're going to need a different type of a task chair or whatever. But how we keep adding and pouring into the people to invest in our culture, that should always give us a return on investment, where not always certain that a policy or a place, will have that same impact like the people.
And really the place and the policy are there to help the people, to put guardrails, to make them more efficient, more productive, make them enjoy life, right? I mean, really, those 2 Ps serve the people. I think that's why they're there.
I agree.
Well,
Taylor,
what's your thought there? Is it people? Is this panel unanimous that it's people?
I'm on the side of people for sure. I mean, it's sorry. Go ahead, Andrea.
No, I was just going to say, I think place, without the people there, the place is nothing but a stale building, right? And you don't need policy if you don't have human beings. So
for sure. I mean, the physical environment, the place, always makes us, gives us some great feels here and there. But just as, we were talking earlier about more of the virtual and the remoteness of our work, what keeps me coming back day to day is the people. I mean, I'm in a remote place that I'm not around a physical environment with any of my teammates, but it's the people that keep driving me back and that keep giving me purpose as well. So I have to lay on the side of people.
That's awesome.
For sure.
With you. All right. So we kind of went around the block here. It feels like a little bit talking about culture. I think forever this question about how do you build great culture? How do you maintain an authentic great culture? So thanks for the conversation, Taylor and Tyler, along the way here.
Fun stuff.
Any final thoughts? Any other mic drop quotes? Should we wrap? All right, we'll wrap. Well, thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Tyler, for joining us on, as well as all of our listeners on the Tell Me More podcast. And stay tuned. We've got more episodes coming.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of another fascinating episode of Tell Me More. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of design and innovation. If you're hungry for more insights and stories, make sure to subscribe to Tell Me More on your preferred podcast platform. As we sign off, remember that the conversation doesn't end here. Connect with us on social media at Allsteel and share your thoughts, questions, or even your favorite moments from the podcast. We love hearing from our engaged and curious audience. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll continue exploring the Design to Do More philosophy. Until then, thanks for listening.